Yo, I'm back. So I recently took a break. I took off work, I did all that. The last time I posted a video was the Sean O'Malley video, and that was about 6 days ago. I took a break from work, I took a break from YouTube, I took a break from the gym, I just took a break from everything, right? Because I went on this vacation. I went to Great Wolf Lodge out here in Texas, so not really just a five-star resort luxury vacation, but it was fun to say the least. I went with a few friends, and so I had a good time, but the whole time I was just thinking about where I was in life, and I was just thinking about YouTube, and I was just thinking about, how much this means to me and how bad I want to make it, that whole time. And I was just sitting there wondering, why can't I just focus on this trip and just enjoy myself? The trip almost went by like a flash, It felt like I was there for 3 days, but it was just like, I felt like I wasn't in the moment enough. And this whole week, I just felt like I wasn't in the moment. I just wasn't enjoying my rest days. I just wasn't I finally went back to the gym, and it was like, I came back home, and it's like, I was almost waiting for the day just to be over, you know what I mean? And it's like, I guess I'm just one of those people that is just like, whenever I do take a break for something, whether it's deserving or not, whenever I finally take a break, I go into this mental, I don't even know. It's like I go down this mental hole where I'm like, man, I'm a bum. I'm lazy. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. What do you think the people that are trying to make it are doing right now? They're probably outworking me. You know what I mean? I just continuously think about that, and it's the insecurity of, if I don't do this, I'm not going to get anywhere. And my subscriber count, I remember I had hit, whenever I first hit my first 100 subscribers, it almost went by like a breeze when I hit 200. I mean, I hit 200, I gained another 100 subscribers in less than a month. And now it has slowed down considerably. I mean, I'm talking 30 subscribers per month now. It's slowed down. It's like I haven't gotten close. I'm now finally close to 300, but I feel like I should have hit it a long time ago, So now I'm here, and now I'm back, and it's like I missed you guys, you know what I mean? And most importantly, I missed covering the UFC. So let's go ahead and jump into the fights. So Kelvin Gastelum obviously lost to Jared Cannonier, and I kind of predicted it, and I didn't necessarily know how Jared Cannonier was going to get it done, but but in the back of my head, I knew that he was going to beat Gastelum, and I kind of knew that he wasn't going to finish him, The fight went about as much as I expected. One thing I didn't see is that I thought it'd be a little bit more of a shutout. I thought that Jared Cannonier would have focused a lot more on the leg kicks. And he kind of stopped throwing them after a certain time. I guess it got checked a few times, and it probably hurt him. And he stopped throwing them as frequent. But I thought Jared Cannonier was going to spam more kicks simply because Kelvin Gastelum doesn't check kicks. But I think it was because he thought that... Sorry, my mic effed up. I think it was because he thought that Kelvin Gastelum was going to check the kicks, I believe. Or catch them, sorry. But, nonetheless, good performance by Jared Cannonier. But I want to focus more on Kelvin Gastelum right now. And it's just that people... I remember when everybody was kind of high on Kelvin. And the crazy part about it was I never was high on Kelvin. I thought in the 185 weight class, I thought he was good enough to beat the gatekeepers. I think he's good enough to beat a guy like Derek Brunson and beat those guys. But I didn't think that he was good enough to ever compete at the top of the division. In a sense, I felt like his competition gap was a big jump whenever he fought Israel Adesanya. I thought he made a massive jump in terms of competition level when he finally fought Izzy. But it's when you look at Kelvin Gastelum's career, and you look at his road, I'm looking at the guys he's beat. Tim Kennedy, Michael Bisping, a few other old guys in between there. He was going to fight Yoel Romero, but I think that fight fell apart for some reason, which really would have told us a lot. But you look at all these guys, man. Some of these guys, Jacare, some of these guys, they're not even in the UFC anymore. And it's like, what is his skill set? You know, what was his level? There was a meme going around about him a long time ago saying that he was beating up the elderly, which it was kind of true. I mean, he knocked out Michael Bisping, and then, if I believe, right after that, that's when he was supposed to fight Robert Whittaker for the title, and Robert Whittaker pulled out, obviously. And then it was he was going to fight Israel Adesanya for the interim title, and Izzy beat him, obviously, right? So this brings me right into my point. Is 185 the right weight class for Gastelum? Because everybody's like, oh my gosh, his career exploded when he finally hit 185, but he fought a bunch of guys who were over the hill. Truth just be told, I remember before he was supposed to fight, before he fought Bisping, I believe. Yeah, it was before he fought Bisping. He was supposed to fight Anderson Silva. And so the crazy part about it is that Anderson, if he at least performed somewhat to the level that he performed against Bisping, when Anderson fought Bisping, I think that Anderson had a solid chance of beating Kelvin Gastelum, outstriking him, and making Kelvin miss. I'm serious. Because it's like, I think at 185, Kelvin Gastelum's skills is above average at best. Above average. What I mean, okay, average is like 70. I believe that Kelvin Gastelum is like 75% rating. No joke. And it's because he's good enough to compete with the top, just not good enough to beat them. Seriously. I think all those top guys, Marvin Vettori, he can maybe outlast Paulo Costa. I think he can beat Costa. I think he's more well-rounded and just more of a better, well-rounded fighter than Costa is. I do think that he could possibly beat Costa. Possibly, right? But I think he loses to Darren Till again. I think he loses to Marvin Vettori. I think he loses. Obviously, he lost to Robert Whittaker. I think he loses. I think this time, if he was to miraculously get a shot against Izzy now, I think he'd get absolutely dominated against Israel now. I just think that he could not find his way into range, and I think he'd eat a bunch of kicks. And I think that he would lose to, just about all these top guys up here. Obviously, in Jared Cannonier, we just saw that. So, it's like, I don't think that his title hopes and dreams are at 185. Because Kelvin Gastelum's purpose, what he wants to do is become champion. But at 185, it looks like that is just becoming slimmer and slimmer due to the fact that he can't even buy a win. So he beat Ian Heinisch. But that was after he went on a 2-fight losing streak, I believe. And now he's back on a 2-fight losing streak. So it's like, the guy just can't catch a break, you know? So it's Kelvin Gastelum, a 185er. So look at his size. He's a big boy, right? But he's not big in terms of muscle. He's got a lot of body fat, right? So it's like, I feel like Kelvin Gastelum is a welterweight. His frame is a welterweight. And he's one of those guys that would benefit with a weight class in between. Because I get it. It's a 15-pound cut to go to welterweight. I get that, dude. At a point, I was 185, right? I was the same size as Kelvin. We probably had like around the same body fat mass. We probably literally looked the same with our shirts off. Now I'm cutting, right? I'm cutting. And I am going to cut down to 170 diet-wise. Like, I'm trying to be there, like, naturally. And, you know, what I'm thinking in my head, I'm the same size as Kelvin. What's stopping Kelvin from just dropping down again? We're literally almost the same height. We're the same. No, we are the same height. I'm an inch taller than Kelvin, I believe. I'm an inch taller. If Kelvin's 5'9", I'm 5'10". So I'm an inch taller. And I believe we have the same reach. He has a 71-inch reach. Kelvin Gastelum is the same size as Conor McGregor. Conor actually has a longer reach than him. If I'm looking at this and it's right, Kelvin Gastelum has a 71-inch reach. Conor has a 74-inch reach. So Conor, if you're looking at it body-wise, is bigger than Kelvin Gastelum. And Conor fights at 155. So, what does this mean for Kelvin? It means that Kelvin Gastelum is a welterweight. He's not a middleweight. It's a bold statement to say, kind of. But the guy is a welterweight. He's not a middleweight. And so, I know the questions, but he did so. If he's not a good middleweight, Why did he do so good against the champion? And it's because of for two reasons. That was Israel's first fight in the spotlight. First fight where he was on a pay-per-view and all the focus and attention was on him. Because if I'm honest, a lot of the hardcore fans, yeah, Max Holloway was fighting Dustin Poirier, but a lot of the hype was surrounded around Israel. Most of the eyes were on Israel Adesanya. He was a big portion, a big reason why that pay-per-view sold. It was because a lot of people there's a lot of hype on Israel, a lot of pressure. People were saying this guy was the next Anderson Silva and so on and so forth, a lot of hype on Israel. And I feel like he felt that pressure because, Kelvin Gastelum was just getting off and landing shots. Not to take away from the work Kelvin did, but I just feel like Israel was nowhere near the form that he is today. He didn't blossom yet. He didn't. In terms of skill, he didn't tap into his full potential yet. And Kelvin was able to make the most of it. Because like I said, if they were to rematch, I think Israel Adesanya would absolutely destroy him. I believe that Kelvin would not find any type of range. I simply feel like Israel would ice him. All the takedowns would get stuffed. And it would be forced to get on the feet. And Kelvin would be swinging at air all day and eating jabs, eating kicks, and eating counters all day long. I believe it'd be a 5-round shutout now. That is why he did so good against Israel in the first spot. And also, I just feel like his coaches just really did a good job of game planning for him. And Israel, like I said, he didn't reach his full potential yet. He got hit with a bunch of shots that he just would not get hit with now. And Israel even came out and said it. He said, if you're looking at that fight and thinking that's the game plan to beat me, he said you're in trouble. Because that's the truth. You can't look at that Kelvin Gastelum fight and say, okay, that's the game plan to beat Israel, because it's just simply not. Israel wasn't as good as he is today. So, that Gastelum fight wasn't necessarily, I didn't look at that Gastelum fight and say, Kelvin has Izzy's number, and if Kelvin can just make it, he would do so good against Israel. No, I didn't think that. What this mainly just tells me is that what Kelvin Gastelum's loss isn't, how he lost to Jared Cannonier and all these things, right? It just shows me how good of a shot Robert Whittaker has now. That's really what all this is telling me. What Gastelum versus dang, I just forgot his name, Cannonier just told me is how good Robert Whittaker actually is. And I was one of those guys, and I was like, okay, Robert Whittaker, everybody's like, Robert Whittaker looked so off, it looked so weird when fighting Israel, because he was rushing things. Okay, I agree with that. But in my opinion, I always thought Whittaker can't fight him much different than what he did, because Israel is so hard to score on, But watching the way these guys have been fighting each other, seeing how dominantly Robert Whittaker watch this fight with Jared Cannonier. Jared Cannonier's really good, by the way. Watch this fight, Gastelum versus Cannonier, and then watch the way Robert Whittaker beat both of those guys. He dominated Jared Cannonier. Although I know Jared had issues. Jared broke his wrist or something like that early, and he didn't want to throw that punch, and it ended up being true. That it actually did happen. But it's like, I feel like they rematch, and I feel like Robert Whittaker would beat him again. I just feel like the striking is just too complex for him. And so, Robert Whittaker dominated Kelvin Gastelum. Dominated him. Shut him out. Didn't have a shot, alright? Out-wrestled him, out-struck him, just completely picked him apart. So, my thing is that Robert Whittaker is really good. This just tells me how good Robert Whittaker is, in that Robert Whittaker has been active and been fighting, and he deserves that rematch with Izzy, and I believe that he could do a lot better in this fight with Izzy. But I also believe that he's probably going to get beat again. He's probably going to get finished again. But it's like, I don't know about getting finished, but maybe this time it goes to a decision, and maybe it's close. But I just don't think. I think that 185 is just Izzy's kingdom, man. I just don't think that anybody's going to beat him there. I believe that he's going to run out of competition at 185, and I just believe that he's going to be forced to move somewhere else, or forced to look for more interesting fights, So, what else? Basically, there's not just with just one fight that was really catching my eye. I mean, honestly, there was a ton of good fights. Like there's a ton of good fights on the card, but it's like my main focus was around this one because this one obviously it was the most interesting one. Well, what was crazy is that Jared Cannonier was supposed to fight Paulo Costa on this card. Jared Cannonier has some crazy power, but that also has to we also have to give credit to Kelvin Gastelum's granite chin, man. That guy can take a punch, and it's like I don't know why he can take a punch so well, but he can, boy. And maybe it's because Jared Cannonier hits so hard, right? And I feel like if that was Paulo Costa that he was fighting, I feel like that fight probably would have ended with if Jared Cannonier would have countered Paulo Costa the way he was countering Kelvin Gastelum, right? And he was hitting, man, that hook, he hits so hard, man. He's so big and he's so strong. His power really did carry down from 205, you know? And it's like, what I think is that he probably would have finished Paulo Costa, and we probably would have had a different opinion on Jared Cannonier coming out of tonight. Because my opinion is that Jared Cannonier is good, but he wasn't as good as I thought he was. I thought he was gonna spam those kicks more, and I thought he was gonna beat Kelvin Gastelum more soundly, but he didn't. And you know, it is what it is. Kelvin Gastelum thought he won the fight. He said, "I thought I won, but I guess whatever." Nah, bro. He also thought he won against Darren Till, and it's like, nah, dude. It's like, nah. Maybe that's part of his problem. Maybe it's like he's not accepting losses, but I don't think that is. I think he really does think he won this fight. But nah, man, you lost. You got dropped twice, I believe. No, it was once. He got dropped. He won the second round. I thought he won the second round pretty obviously, but Jared Cannonier bounced back those other ones. Jared Cannonier won the first, he won the third, he won the fourth, and he won the fifth. It's like, you know, oh maybe I can give Kelvin the fifth, maybe because he did work a lot, but I don't know. I feel like honestly count that as a draw round. Count that 10-10. Either way, Jared Cannonier won the fight. There's no case that you can make that Kelvin Gastelum won that fight. It's crazy that he thought he won that fight, but you know, fighters are fighters. But not a ton to talk about on this podcast because not a ton happened. What's next in terms of content for the channel? So, Jake Paul versus Woodley, the biggest fight of August, is coming up. I'm gonna be centering. There's gonna be a lot of videos coming out on that, so stay tuned for that. Okay. My hardcore's probably not gonna appreciate very much, but I have to talk about it because the MMA fighter is involved. Okay. So, stay tuned for that. It's been your boy Trippy. Let me know what you guys think about this podcast and about the fights last night. And I'm out, man.